What's up, everybody? Andrew Mahone here from Darian's Competitive Pokemon. Going to be doing another old school deck profile today, talking about one of my favorite Pokemon cards, Dark Gengar. This is a super cool deck from the Rocket On format. Rocket On format, as the name suggests, is from Team Rocket On all the way through like Neo Destiny. That's where this deck would have existed in history about 2002, and this was Wizards' first modified format. So very cool. They had rotated out base set, jungle, fossil with all those very overpowered trainer cards that you're used to seeing in these old school decks, like Professor's Oak, Energy Removal, Item Finder, and the sorts. So without these powerful energy removal cards in format, it really opened the doors for some powerful stage 2 Pokemon, slower Pokemon to come into play with bigger attack costs because your energy would finally stick on them. So some different diverse deck strategies started to emerge, and it makes the format very fun to play. One of the other decks for this format that I showed off, that Feraligatr deck, was one of the most dominant decks in 2001 and 2002 when this format existed. Neo Destiny brought this Dark Gengar to the table, which can go toe-to-toe with that Feraligatr deck. This is a very powerful deck, very fun to play, and sometimes not so fun to play against just because of how annoying it can be. So I'm excited to show off this deck in that modified format like I've talked about. This is from the Team Rocket set all the way to Neo Destiny, but also includes Legendary Collection, the Southern Island promos, and Wizards Black Star promos number 1 through 49. If you're interested in reading more about these old formats, I've included a link to Jason Klaczynski's blog. He's been doing a lot of writing about these old formats in his blog that I'll link to below. It's an awesome read, so I highly suggest it for anybody interested in that. And that's where I got this list from. So this is Jason's list that I'm going to be showcasing for you all today. Start things off, we do play with 4 copies of the Eek Cleffa. We also play 4 copies of Ghastly, 4 copies of Dark Haunter, and 3 copies of Dark Gengar. We also play 4 copies of Hoot Hoot, 4 copies of Noctowl, and 1 Mischievous. So let's take a look at these Pokemon. Obviously, we play 4 copies of Cleffa. In all of these Neo formats, Cleffa is really your best friend as far as setting up. Pokemon is awesome, has free retreat, and an amazing attack. Shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 7 cards. Now, the amazing thing about Cleffa is that even though it has 30 hit points, it's got that baby rule. That means if your Cleffa or any baby Pokemon is active, Cleffa is a baby Pokemon, so if it's active and your opponent tries to attack, they have to flip a coin in order to perform their attack in the first place. So it has some built-in protection there. It gives your Dark Gengar some times to be built up on the bench, and really just helps the consistency of getting these stage 2 Pokemon into play. So a lot of times what these modified formats will come down to is you Cleffa and you Eek and you Eek and you Eek until finally you're ready to attack, and then you'll bring up your attacker and attack, but then your opponent can limit your draw options with cards like Noctowl and Rocket Sneak Attack and things like that. So you might have trouble drawing once you decide to attack. So that is kind of the balance here. You're guaranteed to be able to draw while Cleffa is active, but as soon as you bring an attacker active, your opponent can limit your resources with some other hand disrupting cards, and you can't refresh your hand unless you want to retreat your Gengar or retreat your Pokemon and Eek again. So that is kind of the interesting balance that you have in this first modified format, Rocket On. So we have 4 Cleffa in order to ensure that we get to draw and set up appropriately. We play 4 copy of Ghastly from the Fossil set. The reason we play Ghastly from the Fossil set is just because it's got that lick attack. Now, Fossil was not legal in this era, right? We rotated those sets out. However, this Ghastly was reprinted in the Legendary Collection, which does make it a legal card. So this was a reprint from the Legendary Collection. So anybody who's confused as to why we're running the Fossil Ghastly, it's got that amazing lick attack. It's also got 50 hit points compared to some of your other options, which only have 40 hit points. So the Legendary Collection Ghastly going to be the one that we want to play in this modified Rocket On format. Lick, just being able to flip and get a paralyzation, is very strong. Also 10 damage, nothing to scoff at. Nice little attack there for your basic, and just the beefy 50 hit points is the way to go. We play 4 copies of Dark Haunter. Funny enough, Dark Haunter does not get any sort of HP boost from our legendary collection Ghastly, but the Dark Haunter is a pretty cool card. It's got some nifty little attacks. Its first attack, Call Back, says put a baby Pokemon or basic Pokemon card from your opponent's discard pile onto his or her bench and put 1 damage counter on this Pokemon. So Call Back could give you a target like Cleffa, and then actually Dark Gengar has an attack that can bring Pokemon up from the bench. So you could put a baby Pokemon onto their bench with Dark Haunter, then bring it up and knock it out with Dark Gengar for game. So a nifty little synergy that we got going on there. And it also has Surround. For 2 psychic energies, you flip a coin. If heads, the defending Pokemon is now asleep. If tails, the defending Pokemon can't retreat during your opponent's next turn. To boot, Dark Haunter also has free retreat and no weakness and a nice fighting resistance just like Ghastly. So it does make it, at least a useful Pokemon with free retreat. Goes very well with Double Gust. Since Gust of Wind did rotate, all we have is Double Gust, and free retreating Pokemon really make Double Gust a much, much better card. And you can see here, many of the Pokemon in this deck do have free retreat. We have 3 copies of Dark Gengar. Dark Gengar is going to be our primary attacker in this deck, and what really makes the deck shine. Funny, Dark Gengar is a Stage 2 Pokemon with only 70 hit points. It's unbelievable that a Stage 2 Pokemon with only 70 hit points could be powerful, but Dark Gengar does get in there and is very strong, very annoying to play against, even though it's only got 70 hit points. It's got this Pokemon power, Deep Sleep. Says as long as any Dark Gengar are in play, a player flips 2 coins for each of his or her Pokemon that is asleep at the end of each turn. If either of them is tails, this Pokemon stays asleep. So Dark Gengar is the sleep Pokemon. Keeps your defending Pokemon asleep, much easier. Your opponent only has, like a 25% chance of waking up, something like that. If they have to flip, 2 heads in order to wake up instead of 1 between turns. And then they've got this attack Pull In, which is incredible. I said before that Gust of Wind is rotated, so you can't just bring up whatever Pokemon you want on your opponent's side of the board as easily as you could in earlier formats. We do have Double Gust, which is a gusting option, but your opponent can, of course, bring up whatever Pokemon they want, making it a much more difficult card to play. Pull In does 30 damage for 3 psychic energy and says if your opponent has any benched Pokemon, you may choose one of them, switches with the defending Pokemon, before doing damage or other effects of this attack. Either way, the defending Pokemon is now asleep. So what Dark Gengar does will bring up a Pokemon on your opponent's bench, put it to sleep, do 30 damage. That's incredible considering Dark Gengar's ability makes it so that Pokemon is likely to stay asleep, giving Gengar some protection and making it so that at 70 hit points, it does not get just knocked out quite as easily. Your opponent only has a 25% chance of waking up. And the only way that your opponent can get out of sleep is by playing their own switching card or Double Gust. And that's where Noctowl comes into play. I said so in this format, once your attacker comes out into play, you have trouble drawing cards because you have your attacker up in the active position, and Cleffa is how you draw cards. So if Dark Gengar can bring your opponent's attacking Pokemon into the active position, put it to sleep, and then Noctowl can strip your opponent's trainer cards away so they have no way to get that Pokemon back out of the active position. Noctowl has this ability, Glaring Gaze, and it says once during your turn before you attack, you may flip a coin. If heads, look at your opponent's hand. If your opponent has any trainer cards there, choose one of them and your opponent shuffles that card into his or her deck. So with 4 Noctowl in the deck, you could easily set up a couple Noctowl, which means that you could flip a couple of coins per turn to see if you could shuffle any of your opponent's trainer cards into their deck. So it's an amazing kind of synergy that we got going on here. Dark Gengar brings your opponent's attacking Pokemon out into the active position, limiting their draw by making it so that they don't have Cleffa in the active position, and then putting them to sleep. They put them to sleep, then they have a hard time waking up, and you use Noctowl to make sure that they don't have any sort of switching cards in their hand, and you get to keep the lock going. So a very strong lock that we have here with Dark Gengar. We play 1 copy of Misdrevious just because it's got this Night Eyes attack. The defending Pokemon's now asleep, so it's a nice little option to have. Maybe if you don't have 3 energy on your Dark Gengar yet, but you still want to stall your opponent out, Night Eyes can put that Pokemon to sleep, kind of limit your opponent's draw while you build up a Dark Gengar. It's a very good attack to have access to. And what's cool is this is Hoot Hoot, right? You wouldn't think anything of a Hoot Hoot. You would think that probably it just is here to evolve into Noctowl, but Hoot Hoot can also put the defending Pokemon to sleep with Hypnosis. So there's a lot of synergy here and a lot of thought put into all of the cards in the deck. Misdreavus also has this second attack, Perish Song. If the defending Pokemon is asleep and was attacked by Night Eyes during your last turn, it is knocked out. So Misdreavus is another way that you can take advantage of your opponent's Pokemon. Maybe they have like a lot of metal energies on them, like a Steelix or something like that, and Pull In is just not doing any damage to it. Misdreavus is your way to get around a Pokemon with a lot of metal energies on it. Misdreavus can knock out that Pokemon with Perish Song while keeping them asleep. So, if 30 damage isn't ever going to get there, Perish Song will. Gives you a nice option to have against Pokemon that are playing metal energies like Steelix. So that's it for the Pokemon. Let's move on to the trainer cards that make this deck run. We have 4 copies of Professor Elm. Without Professor Oak in format, Professor Oak is rotated out. Professor Elm is your best draw trainer card. We also have 3 copies of Goldberry, which contribute a lot to keeping your Dark Gengars healthy, considering they only have 70 hit points. All right, we also play 3 copies of Pokemon Trader. Since this deck is a very slow, kind of grindy deck to set up, you don't actually need to play any copies of Pokemon Breeder. Pokemon Trader works just fine, and evolving your Pokemon up through Haunter is really the best way to go about it, since the Haunter does have some utility as well. You'll see a lot of these old modified decks are not playing Pokemon Breeder, which is crazy because Pokemon Breeder is just like rare candy, right? You would think that it'd be amazing to be able to skip an evolution to get your Pokemon into play, but really it's just a less consistent way to get your Gengars into play rather than just evolving up through Haunter. And since this format is slower, you rely more on manually attaching energy to Pokemon in order to build them up. Pokemon Trader is the superior card for getting those Pokemon into play. We do play 3 copies of Pokemon Trader just to make sure that you can, shuffle your Gengars back into the deck, grab the Haunter when you need it. This card, as were some of the other, strong trainer cards from base set, were reprinted in the Legendary Collection, which is why Pokemon Trader is legal and not some of those other powerful trainer cards like Gust of Wind. We do play 2 copies of Rocket Sneak Attack, which, kind of like the Noctowl that we play, has a similar effect. It says, look at your opponent's hand. If he or she has any trainer cards, choose one of them, and your opponent shuffles that card into his or her deck. So, amazing trainer card. Obviously, if you use it on the first turn of the game, you can limit your opponent's setup altogether, especially if they did not start a Cleffa. But Rocket Sneak Attack can also be great for just being able to get your opponent's switching cards out of their hand so that your Dark Gengar's sleep is able to stick for longer. We played 2 copies of Double Gust. Double Gust is your only gusting option in this format. Double Gust says if you have any bench Pokemon, your opponent chooses one of them and switches it with your active Pokemon. Then, if your opponent has any bench Pokemon, choose one of them, switch it with his or her active Pokemon. So Double Gust gives you the option to bring up one of your opponent's bench Pokemon into the active position. However, your opponent also gets to do the same thing. So it doesn't matter if all your Pokemon in play have free retreats. That is kind of the ideal way to do this. But if you have some Pokemon on the bench that have a retreat cost and they don't have enough energy on them, your opponent is going to be able to bring them into the active position to strand them there. We also play 1 copy of Resistance Gym and 2 copies of Rocket's Hideout. This is actually different from Jason's list that he posted. I believe he plays 2 Resistance Gym and 1 Rocket's Hideout. I really like Rocket's Hideout in here just because it gives all of your dark Pokemon with dark in their name, plus 20 hit points. So it helps give Gengar a little bit more of a respectable hit point tally. Instead of having 70, we get 90, which is much more formidable. So I really like Rocket's Hideout in here as a stadium card. But we also play 1 Resistance Gym, which says each Pokemon's resistance is reduced by 20, and if a Pokemon's resistance is minus 30, it becomes minus 10. So that's really good for colorless Pokemon, which resist Psychic. I mean, you can't just have your Gengars doing 10 damage turn after turn. So if you expect there to be more colorless decks that you're playing against, put another Resistance Gym in there so that you're not only doing 10 damage to your opponent's colorless Pokemon, which resist Psychic. We also play 1 copy of Focus Band and 1 copy of Nightly Garbage Run. Focus Band is also amazing just for giving your Dark Gengars some longevity. If your opponent does manage to wake up and dish some damage out to your Dark Gengar, you could potentially survive with this Focus Band, and there's no way to remove tools in this format. So Focus Band is going to stick. If your opponent attacks into you, knocks you out, you flip a coin. If heads, Focus Band gets discarded and you survive with 10 hit points. So that is great, just for giving your Gengars a little bit more life. And then Nightly Garbage Run is kind of like your Super Rod of this format. Choose up to 3 basic Pokemon cards, evolution cards, or basic energy cards from your discard pile. Show them to your opponent and shuffle them into your deck. An amazing card to have. Just like Super Rod's an amazing card to have in standard format, just for giving your deck some flexibility as far as, when you have to discard Pokemon and things like that, or if Pokemon gets knocked out, you could put some more energy or more Pokemon back into your deck to reuse later down the game. Now we do play, let's see, I forgot how many energies we play. We play 3, 6, 9, 12, 13 copies of Psychic Energy and 4 Darkness Energy. Now that seems like a lot of Psychic Energy, and it is, but you want to be able to consistently attach energy to your Gengars, and you want to be able to build up multiple Gengars throughout the course of the game. And not only that, but Misdrevious. Each of our Pokemon takes 3 energies in order to be able to attack. So, and each of them takes 3 Psychic Energies. So this is very important for us to have lots of Psychic Energy at our disposal. And also you want to make sure you eke and then draw into a Psychic every turn to be able to manually attach, because that is the only way for this deck to be able to get to attack early. The Darkness Energy are a cool addition here. They give your Pokemon with Dark in their name plus 10 damage to their damage output, meaning that you can use Dark Gengar's attack and do not just 30 damage, but you could do 40 damage or 50 damage, all the way up to 70 damage if you happen to have a Dark Gengar with 3 Psychics and 4 Darkness Energy attached. You could do 70 damage with it. But having that extra 10 damage is very good, especially since Feraligatr has 120 hit points. So that means that Dark Gengar with the Dark Energy and 3 Psychic is going to be doing 40 damage with its pull-in attack, meaning that it 3-hit KOs that infamous Feraligatr instead of a 4-hit KO. So changing those numbers up is really good as well. Dark Gengar, very cool card. This is a very fun deck to play. I highly suggest it if you are interested in these kind of old formats whatsoever. Like I said, this is for the Rocket On format. This is the game's first modified format, the very first rotation from the Team Rocket set onward all the way up through Neo and Legendary Collection. So thank you all for watching the video. Let me know what you think of Dark Gengar in the comments below. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Peace.